A tuning fork that once belonged to Beethoven sits in the British Library. It rings at 405.4 hertz, not the 440 every concert hall on Earth uses today, not the 432 that certain enthusiasts argue should replace it. A pitch no living movement is advocating for. Every instrument performing classical music tonight is calibrated to a number Beethoven's own hands never touched. His fork is preserved behind glass, a physical remnant of a sound the world collectively walked away from. What makes that worth examining is this: his frequency wasn't eccentric. It was ordinary for his era. What we now call the universal standard would have registered to him as something off, something deflated. The number we all inherited wasn't uncovered through acoustics or science. It was decided. And the physical objects that once anchored the older numbers were removed from existence, one by one. If you've already watched the video where I trace the destruction of hundreds of thousands of bells across 3 centuries, you understand the mechanism. This video is about what those bells carried that the melted bronze couldn't, the specific pitch each one held, calibrated by families of craftsmen who moved that knowledge through bloodlines across generations. That sound no longer exists anywhere in the physical world, and the sequence of events that led to its disappearance is more intentional than the historical record tends to acknowledge. Until 1711, pitch had no fixed reference point. Tuning forks didn't exist. No electronic standard, no international convention. Communities anchored their instruments to whatever the largest local source of sound produced, almost always the church organ, and organs weren't uniform. 2 congregations within walking distance of each other could be tuned a full semitone apart. A professional musician crossing from one major city to another would arrive needing to recalibrate everything they carried. This wasn't dysfunction. It was the default condition of sound for the overwhelming majority of human history. Every location had an acoustic identity. The bells outside your window rang at a frequency specific to where you lived. The cathedral organ was matched to the resonant properties of its own stone. The choir locked to the organ. The congregation locked to the choir. An entire acoustic environment built from frequencies that belonged nowhere else. The physical record confirms how dramatically pitch shifted across even short spans of time. A tuning fork connected to handle from 1740 vibrates at 422.5 hertz. An unattributed specimen from 1780 sits at 409. Beethoven's, circa 1800, reaches 455.4. That's a 46 hertz range across 6 decades among prominent figures operating at the center of European music. French cathedral organs in the 1800s sometimes placed their A below 380. The Royal Philharmonic moved between 433 and 455 within a 30-year stretch. Highland pipe bands still perform in the 470s and 480s today. Any claim that a single natural frequency predates modern standardization is a retroactive invention. No such anchor existed. There were hundreds of pitches, each one rooted to a specific location, a particular building, a particular bell. Then states entered the equation. On February 16, 1859, France did not recommend or suggest, it legislated. A law declared that the A above middle C would vibrate at 435 hertz across French territory. The diapason, normal. The first moment in recorded history that a government used legal statute to dictate the oscillation rate of a musical note. Consider the context. A nation that had spent decades in philosophical combat over the rights of individuals, found occasion to write musical pitch into law. The standard migrated. An 1885 Vienna Conference locked 435 into Italy, Austria, Hungary, Russia, Prussia, and several other states. The centralization of sound was underway. But 435 wasn't the final destination. In 1884, Giuseppe Verdi, at that point the most prominent opera composer alive, sent a letter to the Italian government. He backed the French number, but offered something striking alongside his endorsement. If the committee determined that mathematical principles favored 432, he would align himself with that position without reservation. Italy acted on it. The Italian War Ministry, not a conservatory, not an arts institution, a military body, adopted 432 as the national standard. For 1 year, Italy played at a frequency that certain researchers have since argued reflects the underlying proportions of the natural world. Then came Vienna in 1885, with British delegates setting the agenda. They dismissed 432. Italy reversed course. The pitch Verdi had championed, the one a military ministry had formally enshrined, was abandoned inside 12 months. No Italian musicians shaped the reversal. No vote was held. The British delegation simply declared it finished. This is also where most accounts of this history go badly wrong. They introduce the Nazis. They assert that Joseph Goebbels staged a 1939 London conference to weaponize 440 Hz as a tool of psychological manipulation. I traced this claim carefully. It doesn't hold. The 1939 conference was convened by the British Standards Institute. 3 German delegates were in the room, none of them Goebbels. French and Italian delegations were present. The nations supposedly locked out were actually seated at the table. That story would generate more attention than the accurate one. The dramatic version travels further, but the real sequence doesn't require a designated villain. And it's actually more disturbing without one, because it doesn't require coordination to produce its outcome. Here is the timeline that nobody assembles into a single narrative. 1700. Peter the Great seizes roughly 100,000 Russian church bells to recast as cannons following Narva. 1793. The French Revolutionary Convention passes its July 23rd decree. Each parish retains 1 bell, every other is melted. Approximately 100,000 bells from 60,000 steeples are gone within 2 years. 80% of France's total. The Franco-Prussian War of 1870-71 sees the Bishop of Nancy instruct every parish in his diocese to surrender all but 1 bell for weapons production. World War I removes or destroys 44% of all bells in Germany. Then, Decree 118, December 6, 1929. The Soviet government prohibits bell ringing entirely and orders every bell in the country smelted for industrial bronze. 99% of approximately 1 million bells destroyed. 20 dedicated bell foundries shut permanently. The hereditary craft knowledge transferred within families across centuries ceased to exist. When post-Soviet foundries attempted to revive the tradition, they were beginning from nothing. The knowledge had no living carriers. Then the Second World War. Over 175,000 bells confiscated across occupied Europe. More than 150,000 destroyed. Belgium lost 2/3 of its bells. Every bell in the Netherlands was reportedly removed. Only 300 survived, located in a Hamburg warehouse. Combine those figures. Across 3 centuries of revolutions, industrial wars, and administrative decrees, at minimum 425,000 documented church bells were physically erased from Europe. Each was a precision acoustic instrument. Each had been calibrated by specialists to a specific frequency. Each served as the pitch reference for its surrounding community. When the bronze was smelted, the frequencies it held were smelted with it. Every bell cast afterward was tuned to whatever number the current authority endorsed. The old pitches had no other medium in which to survive. I want to be transparent about where my own expectations failed me during this research. I was looking for something deliberate, a coordinated program aimed at specific frequencies. What I found instead was structurally more troubling because it operates without any central design. The French Revolution melted bells for currency and warfare. The Soviets melted them for industrialization. The Nazis melted them for munitions. 3 governments, 3 different centuries, 3 entirely incompatible ideological foundations. The outcome is functionally identical in every case. Cathedral acoustics were not incidental. Researchers discovered that medieval architects had embedded clay vessels in cathedral walls to amplify specific resonant frequencies. Gothic cathedrals produced reverberation times between 5 and 8 seconds. The buildings themselves functioned as instruments. Remove the bells and retune the organ, and the system collapses. Modern buildings replace stone with drywall and resonance with electronics. The architecture stopped participating in the sound. The difference wasn't gradual, it was categorical. Standardization replaced thousands of local acoustic identities with a single broadcast reference tone. In 1936, the United States Bureau of Standards began broadcasting a 440 Hz tone from station WWV. Musicians across the country tuned to it. The local pitch was replaced by the national one. The bells are gone. The buildings remain. The engineering is still there. What disappeared was the sound.